Good morning, Dan and Amy. This is all hands on deck for the Trump administration. And at tomorrow's briefing, it was previewed at last night's briefing. You will hear from Secretary of Education Betsy DeVos, perhaps with some comments on what school districts could be doing as it pertains to distance learning, as well as maybe some suggestions and resources like we've provided here on the show over the last several weeks, online resources that parents might access as everybody is a homeschooling parent now, so to speak. Bethany Mandel is the editor of Ricochet.com. She's a columnist at the Jewish Daily Forward, contributor to the New York Post, and a co-host of the Ricochet podcast, That Bethany Show. And she's got some ideas, too, from someone who is raising kids. Some of them are quite entertaining, actually, as well. Bethany Mandel, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
I like how you start, and speaking as a non-parent, but...
well, you have hypothetical children.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, right.
Those are the best kinds of parents.
The imaginary children.
Who don't have children.
Well, though, it's very much like education, Bethany. It's those
kids are not going to get any screen time.
Right. And those, those who can't teach, sort of the same dynamic. With respect to your mommy camp, you sort of start from the baseline. This is just about survival. Much like the virus, it's just about survival with your kids, not perfection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, so a lot of my friends have no experience being home with their kids outside of maternity leave. And keeping your kids entertained on a day-to-day basis is very different when they're 2 months old versus when they're 2 or 12 or any permutation of ages in between. So a lot of my friends have tried to really go overboard and we're going to do this activity, then we're going to do this activity, and then they have this color-coded schedule of this is when we'll read, and this is when we'll do science, and this is when you'll do this and that. And by day 3, they were ripping their hair out because they're like, I can't do this. This is too hard. And I'm watching them thinking, it's because you're making it hard. It's not actually this hard.
Well, I'm struggling. But I don't have everybody I know has a syllabus and has online work to do. We don't have anything. We have just suggestions right now because nothing is going into the grade book. It's all just extracurricular. So I'm losing my mind because I can't physically. My kids are bigger. I can't physically sit them down in front of a computer and say, "Do your work." So do you have any advice?
So your school isn't sending Zoom meetings or anything?
No.
So that's actually, in my opinion, better. Because
Okay.
my friends who are facilitating Zoom meetings, there is so much on the parents' shoulders to do those Zoom meetings that it's actually what I think is harder because they have to facilitate and they have to jump in between and they have to make sure there's no technical difficulties. Kids are getting in trouble because they don't have Zoom etiquette. So how old are your kids?
15 and 16, freshmen and sophomores.
Oh, that's hard. So they're not listening to you, huh?
Oh, no. We'll get to it later, Mom. We'll do it later. It doesn't matter. We're not getting graded anyway, blah, blah, blah. It's hell.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I mean, for that age, I would honestly think about if there's one really important skill that you feel that you want them to have before they leave the house. Mm-hmm. So, for example, my husband, I'm hiding in the bathroom. I can say this. He loves his house not being able to cook.
Oh.
And that's not okay. So if you can spend this time teaching them 10 recipes that they can bring with them to college and afterwards, this is a tuna noodle casserole. This is how you make spaghetti bolognese. This is how you handle raw meat. Those are really, really important skills that kids are not learning because we don't have home economics anymore. So if they can just pick that up, great.
What about teaching them to make the perfect martini so they have a marketable skill set,
For when they're bartending through college?
Yeah, exactly. Or into their late 30s, as the case may be. Yeah.
I always joke that the thing that I learned in college was how to be a waitress. That was my most important skill that I learned in college.
It's the most important skill. I agree with you 100% because you approach people you normally wouldn't talk to anyway, and you have to learn to be conversational. Dan, maybe you can be a waitress or a waiter.
Yeah, I don't think so. I wasn't born for retail. I don't know how to break it to people. What about the idea, a lot of parents we hear from, they have there's a practicum from the school for the school day, and there's homework assignments and so forth. But it's not like a school setting, and so actually a lot of kids are getting their homework done, and the school day goes a lot more quickly than it does actually in school. And so then the question is, particularly if you have lockdown orders, what else can you do other than run a marathon on your lanai for the kids in addition to their homework?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the secrets of schools that people are realizing. I've been homeschooling now for a while, and I was a teacher in a classroom many years ago. And so I can look at my math curriculum and realize, like, oh, this would have taken me an hour and a half if I did this in a classroom setting, but it takes me 15 minutes with one-on-one instruction. Mm-hmm. So with that extra time, one cool thing that we do in our homeschool that I think would be a really nice activity for lockdown is starting nature journaling. There's this guy named John Muir Laws, and he actually just published his how-to guide for nature journaling online for free. He's publishing the solid book version in the summer, and I pre-ordered it because I have his previous book, and it's amazing. But nature journaling kind of has a lot of benefits that you wouldn't necessarily think of. It makes you much more observant of the world that's in front of you. It makes you curious about how nature works. It helps you learn all of the things that are around you, and it also helps your memory because you're kind of looking at objects differently, and then you have to sit down and draw them. I've found that nature journaling has been extremely therapeutic and calming and also very instructive. And I do a nature journal alongside my kids.
What if
that's what
I'm sorry to interrupt, but what if you have a son who's not tracking to be Henry David Thoreau?
You think I'm an artist? Oh my God. I post my art alongside my daughter's on Instagram, and I do like a poll, whose is better, hers or mine. And I thought for a while that people were voting for hers because they were being nice to a 6-year-old. So I stopped saying whose was whose, and she consistently beats me.
Wow.
Consistently. She's 6.
Nice.
Okay, so we'll do nature journaling, and then what else? And we can't play basketball because Lori Lightfoot says we only have to play basketball one person at a time.
Yeah, but you can. What about
even with your sons?
Yeah, and what about doing things like Legos or doing model
Puzzles.
airplanes, cars, puzzles, playing Trivial Pursuit, playing chess, learning chess. How about learning chess?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a free online chess program, and there's also it's kind of free. It's called Hoffman Academy. All of the videos are on YouTube for free, but then if you want to do their practice exercises or their sheet music or anything, it comes separately. But it's called Hoffman Academy, and my 6-year-old has been learning piano for the last year. And it's a half an hour a day, and she's playing Dinah after like 8 months.
Wow.
I couldn't do it.
Very nice.
I sort of watch her do it, and I'm like, oh, you've surpassed what I could do.
Are you still in the closet, Bethany?
Nature.
I'm in a bathroom. Yeah, can you hear my children screaming in the background? I'm going to lock the door.
All right, so is one of the things that you can do during this time when there's downtime is just sedate them somehow? Is that good parenting?
I would recommend Benadryl. So
yes, that helps.
A good one.
I wanted to ask you about Betsy DeVos. She issued a missive yesterday in advance of whatever she has to say tomorrow at tomorrow's task force briefing. This seeming to suggest that some public school districts are not doing all they could be doing with distance learning because of concerns about sort of equal provision of services to disabled students in their particular districts. And I just wonder, and I don't want to read too much into it, but she did mention that specifically. It goes to a larger problem we've talked about on this show before in these public school districts. If we can't help everybody equally, then we're going to help no one. And that culture just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard, especially for teachers in low-income school districts, because they're juggling a lot of different needs and a lot of different abilities. And so I'm going to kind of defend her a little bit on this, because if she has if a teacher has a classroom of 20 to 25 kids, and 15 of them have a parent at home who's able to help, but the other 5 don't necessarily have a computer or don't have a parent at home that speaks English, those 5 kids make the teacher's life a lot more complicated and really muck up the whole system. And so I mean, this has never happened before, and so individual teachers, in my opinion, need to sort of take stock of all of the kids in their class and how to best serve them all. Because if you're breaking your class up into groups, you can't break a teacher up into pieces. And so if you have 3 hours a day to teach kids, you can't separate the classroom out because you only have that 3-hour chunk. So they're going to have to figure out ways to give out Chromebooks and make sure that people have internet access, because it's not fair if 5 kids don't have internet access or don't have a computer, and so they can't start and then leave kids who are probably already behind. They have to figure out a way to have everyone come together and move forward as a class. And if that means that there's delays, then there's delays, because
that's the problem with CPS.
Now, then that makes their life more complicated later.
Sorry for interrupting, but that was a problem with CPS, because I reached out to officials. Like, we have a computer now. Everybody has a computer. She said not a fourth, more. She said a little bit more than a fourth do not have computers that are CPS students, and she said we can't proceed ahead and leave them behind. Which is very frustrating, because you have teachers I know there's teachers that want to teach and they want to do the Zoom conferencing, but you don't have all the students to be there.
And it's really hard, because if they move ahead, then they're going to have to back up when they get those kids, and that backup is harder than just making sure they can move ahead as
what about
one unit.
Having a do-over and having my kids, just repeat the year? There's a lot of talk of that, especially in Florida. And especially with us, because we had, 3 weeks off in fall, and now we don't even know when we're going back to school. If we are at this time, I mean, do you think that'd be possible?
I don't know. They don't. It's not fair to kids. Like, you can't have 19-year-olds still in high school, so they're going to need to figure out maybe summer school in a year and a half. But a lot of stuff is, I think that this might be a prime moment for them to start figuring out what they can cut. And in my opinion, that's testing. They can cut a lot of test prep time and still have a full education. A lot of school districts this time of year is all test prep. And because they're doing testing at the end of the year. So maybe just don't do testing this year and just call it a day.
Well, 19-year-olds can't have them in high school. That's going to be news to the 19-year-olds in grade school in CPS. But anyway, Bethany Mandel, editor at Ricochet, columnist for the Jewish Daily Forward, contributor to the New York Post, co-host of Ricochet's podcast, That Bethany Show. Thanks so much for joining us, Bethany. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Take care.
Thanks. And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
This is attorney Stephen Leahy, host of the IRS Radio Hour, heard right here on AM 560 every Sunday evening at 5 o'clock. Let me tell you about Bill. Bill's business slowed down and he fell behind on his taxes. Instead of filing his tax return, he decided to wait until he could pay. Well, 1 year turned to 2, turned to 3. Then the IRS threatened to contact his customers, take his house, his bank account, and his passport. Well, Bill hired me. We filed all of his tax returns and an appeal to slow the IRS down. Then we worked out an installment agreement based on how much he could pay, not on how much he owed. Now Bill can rely on the IRS protection plan. We will file his future tax returns and keep the IRS off his back so Bill can focus on growing his business. If you have questions about the IRS, you can get a copy of my book, Deal with Your IRS Problem Today, to learn the secrets of solving your IRS problem and save your business, your marriage, and your reputation. Call 312-664-6649 or go to freeirsbook.com.
If you own or run a business with an office or warehouse, now is the time to take action to keep your facility, your employees, and your visitors safe and healthy. Right now, hospital and surgical grade disinfecting is available for all surfaces. This disinfecting is EPA registered and approved for coronaviruses and 140 other organisms. This is better.